Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. We have the great Nina Turner on today. We also have Nancy Pelosi's primary challenger Shahid Buttar. He will be on to talk about his campaign. And the New York Times media columnist Ben Smith has been tweeting about Tara Reade and the media's coverage, or lack thereof, of her allegations against Joe Biden. And that is where we want to start today, because yesterday seemed to be a bit of a turning point in terms of that media coverage.
It was dizzying, really, like all of the different elements that we were getting in from this developments on this story. So we'll start with the biggest and most major development. That is the Washington Post editorial board saying that that Joe Biden must address the allegations against Tara Reade, that he personally must address them. They say that it's just no longer enough, the blanket denial that his deputy campaign manager has put out a statement attributed to only the campaign. And it just goes to show, I mean, how ridiculous the denials that we've seen from Stacey Abrams and Kirsten Gillibrand that I played yesterday, saying, I believe Joe Biden. He has vehemently denied these allegations. No, he has not denied anything. He's never been asked about it to his face. And it's just an egregious media story at this point.
It is. And that's part of it, is like yesterday, suddenly there was like this outcry from the media about, he's got to answer, he's got to speak directly to this. It's like, well, maybe ask him a question about it if you want him to have to respond to it, rather than just asking questions of, the women who are potentially going to be picked as his VP, which, look, I think all these people who are complete hypocrites on the issue deserve to be questioned on it. I don't have a problem with that, but it is outrageous that they should get asked about it and he should not.
Yeah, that's really what it is. And, the hypocrisy on display is not just these lawmakers, because this is something that caught my eye yesterday during the show. And this is just egregious. And this is women's groups. 10 different women's groups were contacted by Hannah Trudeau and another reporter over the Daily Beast. Hannah, you'll recognize from our show. They have not said one word about Joe Biden's sexual assault allegations. And that includes Planned Parenthood Action Fund. That includes NARAL's Pro-Choice Action Fund. That includes Emily's List. That includes the National Organization for Women, Gloria Steinem. And then, so again, because this is what I love to do. I went through at Google, Planned Parenthood Action Fund, Christine Blasey Ford. I believe Christine Blasey Ford. Okay. NARAL Pro-Choice Action Fund. We believe Anita Hill. We believe Christine Blasey Ford. Okay. Emily's List. We believe Dr. Christine Blasey Ford. 1 year ago, she came up in order to speak her truth. Not a single tweet about Joe Biden. Gloria Steinem and the then president of the National Organization of Women both said in 2017 that they wish they had been better about Bill Clinton's accusations at the time. They said, I kind of wish I hadn't,
which is
gone
easy
after.
To say
very
decades after the fact.
In 2017, just like Kirsten Gillibrand, who said that he should have resigned. Both of those people were contacted for comment about the Joe Biden allegations. Not one word.
Maybe 15 years from now, they'll be ready to admit they were wrong here as well. New York Times had some back reporting on that dynamic between some of these women's groups and the Biden campaign. Of course, they've been like angst-filled about how to deal with this and what to do. And so they had a dialogue with the Biden campaign. They put together a letter basically calling on him to respond directly to it, to take it seriously, to sort of be a leader on how he handles this allegation. The Biden campaign very, vociferously sort of tried to quash it. And here we are, weeks later, Biden still has not said anything, and these women's groups still have not said anything. It kind of reminds me of like the situation with progressives in the Biden camp in general. They have this, they imagine that they can put pressure on him and he's going to respond and it's going to make a difference. But ultimately, if you're already saying like, I'm with you and I'm going to vote for it and you're way better than the other guy, then you have no power. Of course, they're not going to respond to you. What leverage do you ultimately have?
They do not care. And you're looking at this. This is an ironclad. Look, in a way, I kind of respect it, because the Biden campaign is out there just being like, nope,
absolutely
you are not going to address it. You're not going to say one word. What comes out of your mouth comes from my talking points. And we saw this already. I mean, the campaign's talking points that we talked about yesterday about they were like, just point to the New York Times and say he was exonerated. The exact words that came out of Stacey Abrams' mouth whenever she was asked about that. They've got some new talking points, actually. And here's what they have to say, because now after they got called out, and we're going to talk about about this later, by the New York Times saying, no, we didn't disprove anything. This is what they now say. The Larry King clip does not corroborate Ms. Reade's recent claims. In fact, it raises new questions about her account. Oh, okay.
Really?
The woman caller says her daughter respected the senator but was unhappy in the office. Comments that track closely what Tara Reade told the Washington Post earlier this year about her issue was with the office, not the senator. It does not blame Biden, nor does it cite sexual assault or harassment. That is some weak stuff.
Well, and it also speaks to, in my view, you're right. The smart strategy for the Biden campaign has been to just say nothing, lock down, here's the talking points, here's a statement from the deputy campaign manager, et cetera. But they made two really significant errors. Number one was the blanket denial of not only did this specific allegation not happen, but no one ever complained about Joe Biden. His behavior was perfect. No one so much as raised a concern, which if you've watched his behavior in public, first of all, you've already had 7 different women come out and say, we had a lot of concerns. And second of all, if you've watched his behavior in public, like that's just absurd on its face and leaves you vulnerable to one staffer then coming out and saying, no, actually, I had issues in the office, or the sexual harassment claim that Tara says that she filed that's probably on file with University of Delaware, if it exists, something like that, emerging and coming out and completely undercutting their whole narrative. So there's that mistake. The other one, which I think is even more damaging and is why we saw such a breaking of the floodgates yesterday, is that they lied about the New York Times reporting and said the New York Times this was the first set of talking points. The New York Times investigated this thoroughly and concluded it did not happen. Talking points that we heard recited almost word for word by Stacey Abrams, who of course wants to be Joe Biden's VP pick. Well, the New York Times, look, their article was totally biased in favor of the Bidens, but they don't want to be seen as being blatantly used as propaganda and weaponized. So they pushed back. They were mad. And that doesn't just reverberate with the New York Times. That reverberated throughout all of elite media because they do not like the idea of being seen as so clearly in the tank for Biden.
That's the key that you identified. It's not that they don't mind playing and flacking for these establishment Democrats. You're not supposed to say it. You're not supposed to say it out loud. It's supposed to be like a tacit understanding. The New York Times investigated these claims, and they didn't find anything credible. And then, by the way, that's what they just changed their story to. So, reading from their new talking points, this is according to Bloomberg News reporter Jennifer Epstein, the New York Times, Washington Post, and Associated Press spent weeks doing extensive investigative research into her claims and found no other allegation of sexual assault, no pattern of sexual misconduct, and no former Biden staff members corroborated any details of Ms. Reade's allegation. So that's what they should have ran with from the beginning. But they overreached, and they're like, no, the Times cleared us. And I knew that wasn't going to be able to fly with the Times. Well, actually, maybe not. The Times just can be shameless. I suspected
they would be irritated
by it. They would be irritated because, like we said, you're not ever supposed to say the quiet part out loud about how they do flack for you, they write press releases for you, they do your bidding at the drop of a hat, delete sentences, and all of that. Nobody is supposed to say it. You're just supposed to do it. And then it maintains the illusion of objectivity and separation. But the moment that he did that, they had to fight back against him in public.
Yeah, and of course, as we covered yesterday, it's also important to note that critical sentence that the Biden campaign is basically hanging their hat on, that no pattern was found, that is the very sentence that they called into the New York Times to get changed, to take off the part about outside of unwanted kissing and touching and hugging, et cetera, that has come up in the past. So they clearly saw that sentence as the linchpin of their defense here, but they went overboard in saying definitively, they found nothing, and they actually determined this did not happen. They did no such thing.
They certainly didn't. And another way I knew the dam was breaking, this is a very significant moment kind of within internal Washington that I wanted to show you everybody here, which is that Jonathan Karl, he's the chief White House correspondent over at ABC News. He just wrote a book, so he was on Fox News. He was asked about this. So president of the White House Correspondents Association asked about these allegations and how they should be handled. Let's take a listen to what he said.
There is no question, Ed, that these allegations against Vice President Biden are going to have to be answered for. He's going to have to answer these questions. And I think you're seeing the story as more evidence has come forward. It's being covered. In fact, I think it's on the front page of the Washington Post today.
Yeah, they were dragged to it kicking and screaming.
That is how when the president of the White House Correspondents Association is out there, I mean, that is a real signal boost to everybody else involved. They're like, no, we're going to have to start asking him about this.
Between the Washington Post editorial board coming out and saying he's got to answer questions on this, and John Karl coming out and saying the same, yes, this is a real tipping point. And let's not give these people too much credit. I mean, great that they're here now and they're actually covering. As I said, they were dragged to this kicking and screaming. CNN got scooped on their own footage. That's how uninterested they were in this story, right? It was Rich McHugh at Business Insider, not one of the main top most prestigious newspapers in the country, that got the big scoop about Tara's neighbor corroborating and also her former work colleague. I mean, they just haven't been putting in the investigative resources. They haven't been interested in actually digging in the facts. They've been, interested in weeks too late, sort of putting up their perfunctory pieces, skewing them in favor of the Biden camp. But I do think that when they put out those talking points, lumping the New York Times in and saying they had validated them, et cetera, and they found nothing happened, that was really kicking a hornet's nest, and they are going to regret having overreached like that in their own talking points.
I agree. And, it's like you said, it's so funny. You do these people won Pulitzer Prizes for Me Too reporting. They have millions of dollars that they have spent going after Bill O'Reilly and Harvey Weinstein and CBS and every Charlie Rose and all this. Why not the former vice president of the United States? Why are you getting scooped by Ryan Grimm and Rich McHugh, which are basically, you have Ryan and Rich barely have nearly as many access to the same resources as the New York Times, and they're getting scooped left and right by their own story. And here's the other thing. Even if they ask him about it, I don't think it's going to change anything.
No, he's not going to. I mean, he needs to be asked about it. He's just going to deny it. It's not going to really change the game.
Because now it's just a perfunctory thing. You're going to ask him about it. He's going to say a couple of things. This never happened. I've been a strong advocate for women. And he's going to talk about the Violence Against Women's Act. Mark my words. When it happens, we can play this back. We can play his clip. That's exactly what's going to. And then guess what? Everyone's going to. Well, we asked him about it.
Right.
And
we asked him about it.
On.
Yeah.
And in 2 weeks, this is the strategy. He'll build up so that he looks like he's doing something by responding to a question about it, and then dead. Nobody will ever talk about it again.
Well, here's in terms of mainstream Democrats and their positioning right now, they're basically in lockdown mode of this is our guy. We have no other choice, so we're going to run interference for him, and we're going to cover up for him, and hypocrisy be damned, all of that. That's where they are now. But you should know it's not too late. I mean, yes, is it unlikely the Democrats switch out Joe Biden? It's unlikely, but they could easily do it at the convention. He still doesn't have a majority of delegates in order to outright win on the first ballot. So don't be gaslit into thinking that there are no other options available. They don't want to explore any other options, but there are, in fact, other options available. And I think when that starts to actually become a conversation within the elite echelons in the party is if other accusers emerge.
It would have to take new reporting, I think.
He can survive this if this is it. If this is literally it. If there are other accusers who are watching this unfold and watching these blanket denials and the dismissal of Tara Reade and how she's been treated, who ultimately emerge, that would be the thing that would really change the calculus within the Democratic Party.
I think you're right.
All right, we're going to tell you what's on our radars. That's next.